y'all, I'm Milana and welcome to my channel Unabridged Adventures. And today we are going to be having a little chat about this book right here, Oathbringer. And my reorganization worked just perfectly because I can just have it sitting right here. So Oathbringer is the third book in the Stormlight Archive series, and honestly it was kind of my favorite, but we'll get into that later. There will be spoilers in this, just so you know. So if you're planning on reading this Stormlight Archive, I really wouldn't watch this video. So, yeah. I'm gonna be real honest with you guys in that I really shouldn't be filming this today, because I have my finals on Thursday and Friday, and I should be studying, but I also started writing 4 different papers yesterday, so I need a break. And that break is going to be talking about Warbreaker. Not Warbreaker. Oathbringer. Oathbringer. I don't know if I've said Oathbringer this whole time, but Oathbringer. Y'all can see how much finals are getting to me. But yeah, this isn't going to really be a review because, I mean, 5 out of 5 stars. It's Stormlight Archive. It's just... I can't give them anything but 5 out of 5 because they're always just up to that standard. Because for me, 5 out of 5 is, I really enjoyed it, and I would reread it again, and there was just something else. So like 3, actually I'm gonna have to do a whole video on my rating. I'll have to probably cut this. Okay, so Oathbringer is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archive, and it handles a lot of things. So the first 3 books at least, I'm not going to get any spoilers about Rhythm of War, don't worry. But the first 3 books are each like a character's book. So in the first book we follow Kaladin's backstory, as you guys know if you're still watching this, I'm guessing. We follow Kaladin's backstory and we get all of the information on him, or quite a bit of information on him, while also following the main plot. Same goes for the second book with Shallan. We see a lot of her like upbringing and what a lot of her trauma was about, because this is all following all the characters' childhood trauma. And then in Oathbringer, we finally get Dalinar's backstory. And Dalinar is probably my favorite character. Like, him and Adolin are like really neck and neck at the moment. I love Kaladin, I do, but I kind of like Adolin more. I like their friendship a lot, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, Oathbringer. It's such a large book that it's difficult to get through everything I thought about it. But just starting off, like, one of the first things that I noticed about Oathbringer whenever I was reading it, and I actually wrote down in a Google Doc to remember later, is that I love how Brandon doesn't shy away from showing just how brutal, like, Dalinar was. Because I understand as you get through the book, you're supposed to see how brutal he is, but at the very beginning, like, they start you off with like that first chapter of his like flashbacks, and it is brutal. It is, oh gosh, I can't even think of a correct word for how monstrous. Like, we really see the monster that the Blackthorn was, and we really see why everyone fears him and why everyone doesn't trust him, and we see all of that, and then because of the way the flashbacks are put, we then see like the present day Dalinar and how different he is from that man and how much he's still trying to reckon with his history. Because I think a lot of us went into it, I know I'm speaking for myself, but I think a lot of us went into this saying like, oh yeah, the Blackthorn, the war hero, like, yeah, and like based off of Adolin's whole thing about how he wants everyone to respect his dad, you'd think that he would be very respected and loved and praised, and he's not. He's really kind of a monster. And he's supposed to be. Like, that is his whole point. And I love that we got to see that. I loved how we could see how everyone else played into Dalinar's brutality, but also how this wasn't anyone else's fault, but really his. Like, the Unmade had a hand in it. Sorry, I'm trying to remember what is a spoiler and what isn't for Rhythm of War. But the Unmade absolutely had a hand in it with the thrill. But gosh, he still made those choices, is pretty much what I'm trying to get to. And the fact that we just started off like full speed ahead, like there is no shying away from just how brutal Dalinar was, and I loved seeing that. Like, I did not love his actions. I do not condone anything that that man did, but just there was no softening the blow. Like, it was very much like, oh, we're going straight into this, and you're going to realize just how far Dalinar has come, but also how far he kind of has to go. And so, really seeing that was absolutely amazing. And I don't know a lot of other authors. Like, I don't read Grimdark, so this could just be like I'm not used to open brutality in my books, but I loved seeing how Brandon didn't shy away from that at all. Okay, so then, of course, the next thing to get into with Dalinar's backstory is his wife. I'm gonna have to check her name. Okay, Evie. We're gonna hope that doesn't fall down. um, I've got my tea sitting like right under it, so. Okay, so getting into the next part of Dalinar's backstory, which is his wife, Evie. And Evie was not at all what I expected. The only thing like I really knew about Evie was just some things that Navani had said in I think the first or second books, where she just said, "Oh, I'm not trying to replace Evie," um, and like I know you really loved her and sort of stuff like that. And so I always pictured Evie as this. I don't know. I always pictured her much more Navani like. I guess I always kind of saw it as she kind of encouraged Dalinar, but seeing the like real Evie, because like I know their characters, but like seeing the Evie that actually exists in the book was completely shocking and absolutely brilliant. And it really does really hit home the idea of like we are not like us as the readers are not crazy for thinking that Dalinar is being exceptionally brutal or monstrous whenever he does these things, because in Alethi culture, this is completely okay for him to do and encouraged. And she, being an outsider, is kind of saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't slaughter a village of children or something. And so she almost seems like the stand-in for the audience because she could see the man that Dalinar could be, whereas we are also reading the chapters where Dalinar is in the present day and is trying to be better and is trying to live up to this man that Evie believed he could be, even though he wasn't doing it quite consciously at first. It was just it was amazing to kind of see her as the audience like representative almost. There's an actual term for that, I know, but it was just I loved seeing Evie and all that she was doing and being emotional and being open about her feelings and not quite fitting into the Alethi way of doing things. And I loved seeing that. I loved seeing the characters that we know so well having to deal with this surprising outsider that doesn't quite get the culture, and when she does, she doesn't like it. And it was really amazing. And Evie's death, that was not something that I expected whatsoever. I thought that he would have a part in it somehow, but I did not know that it would be like that. And it's such a difficult thing to deal with because then you have to wonder whose fault is it, and that's kind of something that we have to see him reckon with and a lot of other characters reckon with. And it's difficult because yes, he did not know, but he could have if he hadn't killed the messenger. And yes, he did try to pull things back, but he'd already made those decisions. And I know I'm like working through this in my head right now because I still don't know what to believe here. And it's such an interesting moral discussion about like, was that murder? Was that manslaughter? Was that something else entirely? Is Dalinar at fault for killing his wife? Or did she just happen to die in a fire that he set without knowing she was in there? Like, it's a very difficult discussion to have, and I I find it fascinating. I definitely think that Effie's death contributed to the plot in an interesting way. And seeing Dalinar with his sons was definitely different than I expected it to be. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to think through all of these things because there's just so much here to discuss. Um, Gosh, but Dalinar with Adolin growing up was so different than I expected because you know how much he loves his sons and you know just how much he cares. And even in the present day, he's always trying to be there. And he may not be there in the correct ways all the time, but he's always doing his best to be there for them. And so seeing in the past how he wasn't, and how, yes, he did feel this great, like, excitement and emotion whenever Adolin was born, but he wasn't even there for Renarin's birth and kind of wrote Renarin off. And so seeing the difference of, like, where he's now doing everything he can to include Renarin in, like, the battle and trying to get him to come out of his shell, you just get to see how much he progressed as a person with the people closest to him. And I absolutely loved that, and seeing how Renarin was the one that, like, brought him out of things was amazing, because you really see, because Adolin and Dalinar are so similar at times, just, they're the same person, but they've grown up differently and they've had different influences. And Renarin is a completely different person, and so seeing Dalinar try to connect with his son that he really doesn't have a lot in common with, and seeing him try to, like, work through that is just amazing, and I love it. I love everything about that. Okay, so getting into the more difficult and more, like, emotional parts, I guess Evie's death was fairly emotional, but yeah. I can't go through everything, of course, but I do want to talk about Kholinar and some of the time in Shadesmar before I have to wrap this up, because I know this has been going for a while, at least recording. I don't know how long it is in the actual video. But the rescue of Kholinar, or the attempted rescue of Kholinar, was incredibly interesting and not at all what I expected. And I don't have a lot to say about the beginning of the rescue other than really seeing Shallan and Vale and Radiant, kind of acting as slightly more separate people at that time was very interesting, because you can really see how she starts to treat these other personas as ways to protect herself. And I really enjoyed seeing that and seeing the progression of that, because before she really believed that Vale was just a character that she slipped into, and then she starts to view Vale as more of a part of herself, but different, sort of. And it was very interesting to see the progression of that, and I'd love to talk more about that in the comments if anyone has other ideas, because I'm so out of it. But the part that I really wanted to discuss was the, like, storming of the castle with Kaladin, Elhokar, and Moash. I gotta say that I did not care about Elhokar for the first two books, and I don't think you're really supposed to. He's supposed to be this difficult character where, like, you understand that politically he's important, but you just don't care about him. And you really start to see him getting better through Oathbringer. I started to actually care about him as a character, because you could really see how he's trying to do better. He's doing it in a slightly more childish way, I'd say, because I don't think he ever learned this as a child. And so he's doing his best to progress as a person. And then my heart stopped when he started saying the oaths. Like, I was so just shocked that I was listening to the audiobook, and I was sitting there on my couch, and just everything stopped. And then when Moash killed him, I don't even have words to explain just how much that broke me. Because it wasn't that I cared about Elhokar as a person, really, or as a character, or whatever, but it was the fact that someone trying to be better and someone doing everything that they can to be better and just about to make that, like, that first real step was just completely cut off and stopped. And how just, like, one more second it would have all been okay, probably. Like, he would have become Knight Radiant, or whatever the, like, beginning is, the Squires or whatever, and he would have sucked in some Stormlight, and he would have healed, and he would have been fine. But at that last second, everything stopped for him. And I think that just that moment was so important to see, because it really shows the stakes of this book. Like, he's not afraid to kill off one of the more important characters. Like, if Elhokar died in the first book or the second book, I honestly wouldn't have been that surprised, but I kind of figured, like, he made it through the first two books, and, like, they'd show, like, oh, he has this, like, story arc where, like, he becomes a better person, and just the fact that Brandon was willing to just completely cut that story arc off and saying, nope, he's dead now, he doesn't get his redemption, was just so fascinating. Because one of the things I was saying on my Discord chat with the lovely World Hoppers, I believe, that Cheyenne has set up, we were discussing Moash and how we feel about him. And I was saying that I feel like Moash and Elhokar are, like, they are the foils. Like, they are the opposites of each other. They're two sides of the same coin, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying different metaphors, but you know what I mean. So, both of them come from this place where they're trying to be better. Like, Moash is coming from the bridge cruise, and, like, Kaladin is really trying to get him to be better and trying to get him to be a person again, trying to get him to relate to other people and society and just be human again and not be a bridge man. And Elhokar is coming from this opposite place of power where he is the king, but he's not had to really be someone that is responsible for his actions. And so they're both on this path of trying to get better, but both were going about it in not quite the right way. And Elhokar tried, but he believed that to be better, he had to really, like, solidify his rule and not let his uncle push him around. And while that's somewhat true, he also wasn't willing to take the lessons that people were trying to give him. And kind of the same goes for Moash, where Kaladin was trying to help him be a better person and put aside his vengeance and really just, like, move forward with his life. And Moash was just not willing to let go and to take that advice. And so, finally, both of them took these next steps in their journeys. But with Moash, it was letting go of everything except for his vengeance. And with Elhokar, it was letting go of his personal issues and trying to be better for others. And you can see kind of how they're on this path to meeting each other, because Moash's vengeance is all about Elhokar, and Elhokar doesn't even really know or care about Moash. And when they meet in this middle, you know that something has to happen. And Moash was just faster. He was more brutal, and he was more willing to do these things, which just goes to show the type of characters that they are. And I think it was so interesting to watch happen. I am so fascinated by Moash's character arc and everything that's happening there. Again, don't worry, no spoilers. But just, it is fascinating. Okay, I know, I'm taking so much time with this. Okay, so the last thing that I really want to touch on is... Oh, there's two things. One is a very serious one, and one is just a very fun one. So, be forewarned. So the first thing I really wanted to talk about was... Or I guess the third thing, but whatever. It was Dalinar and Odium. And the "you cannot have my pain" moment. Like, I know that everyone loves, I think it's the Words of Radiance climax, or the, I don't know. I can't even remember what the words Radiance Climax was. I guess it was the Everstorm, but I don't know, it didn't hit as hard as this did for me. And so Oathbringer is my favorite, I think, because of this moment. And then as someone who struggles with anxiety and depression and kind of wanting to sometimes numb these feelings and give away this pain that you're going through, and kind of your senses numb it for you. I don't know if you guys, like, if anyone else has dealt with depression, then you probably understand, or at least you can see in Kaladin, where he kind of becomes numb to the things around him, and just nothing really makes things better, and things can't really get any worse, sort of in his mindset. And that is such an accurate portrayal of at least what my depression was. And so the willingness to just kind of sink into depression and let the pain just kind of numb is such a tempting thing. And so seeing this character that has been through so much pain, has been through so much, say, no, you can't have my pain. This is something that I need to deal with on my own, and I'm not willing to just give it up. I'm not willing to just let things be numb forever. It meant so much. I literally punched the air whenever he said that, because I could completely understand if Dalinar took that easy path. I could completely understand if he decided that the pain was just too much, that his memories were just too much, and instead he took that very difficult next step and said, no, my pain is mine, and it is mine to bear, and it is mine to deal with, and you can't have it. And I absolutely loved everything about that moment. Just, if anyone wants to talk in the comments about that moment, I could scream for hours about it, because it is so good. But I know, currently I've been recording for 25 minutes, so I probably need to start wrapping this up. But, oh, the last part. Okay, so dealing with all of that, and the you can't have my pain, and all the emotions that came with that, then you get to this moment where, like, the love triangle that was forming starts to come to a head, and I was just sitting there going, no, just no. Like, I never shipped Kaladin and Shallan. Like, I don't see it. I don't like it. In my mind, they are best friends. And it's like that kind of teasing, push and pull best friend sort of dynamic. Because, like, they're in the chasms, and he's like, yeah, she reminds me of Tien. And I'm like, so this girl that you are crushing on reminds you of your dead brother? I think that's your best friend, honey. Like, really, they should just have this sibling relationship, and I would be so there for it. And just, instead, they get this weird crush thing going on, with Vale crushing on Kaladin while Shallan is with Adolin, and it's a very weird thing. And I did not enjoy any of it. To be honest, if I'm gonna ship anyone out of the, like, any two couples, or there should be a love triangle with any of the two couples, either it needs to be Shallan and Adolin, and, like, Kaladin and Adolin. That might be too much, and I might take that out, but, like, there's more chemistry there than there was with Kaladin and Shallan. And so I was getting towards the end of this book, and I was going, oh my gosh, am I going to have to put down this series? Because I don't know if I can keep reading the next 7 books if she ends up with Kaladin. Like, I just don't know if I can stomach that. And I know it's such a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but I just felt like if he's willing to go down with this trope and willing to stick with the whole, like, she's with the perfect guy, but then the bad boy walks in, like, I didn't know if I could handle that. And so I was so happy. First of all, the whole, like, Adolin, like, I'm gonna let him have you moment. Like, I knew that Shallan was going to, like, snap back and be like, how dare you? Like, even if she is going with Kaladin, there is no, like, letting him have me thing. Like, she is her own person. She can make her own decisions. You could say, I'm stepping back, but the whole, like, letting him have you thing is such a guy thing to do. And just okay, sorry, not a guy thing to do. It's just such a fantasy character guy thing to do, I guess. But it was just, I absolutely loved how it turned out. I loved the whole, like, but he can fly conversation, and how, like, wow, I guess I have this perfect guy that loves me and understands everything about me, but I guess since he doesn't fly, I can't marry him. Like, I loved that whole conversation, and I loved Kaladin realizing that he didn't really like, or like Shallan, that there was just some other emotions there, and I was so relieved. You do not understand how relieved I was. Like, whenever it comes to Adolin almost dying in Shadesmar and being saved versus Shallan almost choosing Kaladin, I was more relieved that she didn't choose Kaladin. So, yeah, everything about this book I loved. I loved getting Dalinar's backstory. I loved learning more about cultivation, seeing more Wit. Wit is great. And seeing his relationship with Shallan kind of developing was lovely. And there's so much more I could talk about, but I literally do not have the time or the, like, storage space. So if you guys want to chat in the comments, I would love that. As usual, my socials are down below, and yeah, I think that's it. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!